Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video on the Video Critic channel. I'm David, your host, and today I'm going to give you guys my performance review on the Nike Ja 2s. Now, with my previous experience in the Ja 1s, it was actually a pretty solid shoe all around. The traction to me was very grippy and very consistent regardless of the court condition that you were in, and it barely had any durability issues on top of that, and it didn't pick up that much dust. Cushioning, while pretty basic, it was a lively, responsive cushioning setup with a good bit of bounce and pretty comfortable overall in the heel, but it does bottom out over time. And the materials, while they're pretty basic too, they were pretty comfortable as well with the basic materials that you've got, as well as the lockdown and the support with a little bit of work that needed to be done to it. In my opinion, it was just a little lackluster, but they were still supportive nonetheless. So I was curious to see what Ja could build off of when it came to the Ja 1s and see what he improved in the Ja 2s. Starting off with the overall trying experience, they were a little difficult to put on, mind you. The lacing system was a little tight, so you had to loosen up the laces a little bit just to get your foot inside the shoe, and the tongue was independent too, so it does pinch a little bit, so you do have to hold on to the tongue just to get your foot inside the shoe. That way you won't have any pinching from the tongue itself. As far as sizing is concerned, I went true to size, and it fits overall pretty decent. The width of the shoe is really nice, but it does run a little bit narrow. And the length overall does run a little bit long. There's a little bit of space in the toe box, but it's nothing that serious. So because of that, I would probably go true to size. While for narrow footers, I would probably go down half a size just to be sure, because it is on the narrow side of things. And for wide footers, you should be good to go going up half a size as well, so keep in mind of that. For retail price, they go for $120, just like the Ja 1s. So if you guys are interested, they're available on Nike.com, and I'll leave a link in the description box below. Now, for the traction pattern itself, you are getting this full-length rubber outsole with this jagged radial traction pattern that you get throughout the shoe. And in terms of grip, they are very grippy, just like the Ja 1s. However, they are not as consistent, in my opinion. For lateral movements, they are very quick and sudden, so you're able to be really shifty going from side to side. I was able to get a consistent grip for the most part when you are on a clean court. However, when dust picks up a little bit, it does tend to slide a little bit under you. And for vertical movements as well, the hard stops are good, but there is some give to where I do slide a little bit forward when I try to do hard stops especially. But when it comes to get-offs, they are very good, so you're able to get a nice launch off of your first step. So if you want a quick first step, you're getting that in these. For dusty conditions, like I said earlier, it does pick up some dust. However, it is easy to wipe off, so just be mindful that once it gets dusty, you can just wipe it right off and you're going to be good to go. But just be mindful that it does pick up dust pretty quickly, and I had to wipe them down frequently when I was playing a game, like a few times at a time, and it did cause some sliding while I was playing, so that was a little bit of annoyance to deal with. So as long as you wipe it down, you should be good to go. Just be mindful that you're going to have to wipe off them, especially during games. When you move it to durability, it is pretty good as well. I am experiencing little signs of wear in the high wear areas, which is really good overall. And the overall rubber itself is a little soft, so I found that kind of surprising. So you should be good to go outdoors, but just be mindful that the rubber is soft at the end of the day, so it might wear off and start to bind together with the rest of the grooves itself. So if you want to maintain the life out of this outsole, I would recommend that you keep them indoors. But for outdoor use, you should be fine for the short term, but in the long run, it's going to wear off. So at the end of the day, the traction setup to me is on par with the Ja 1s when it comes to the overall grip that you get, but they are less consistent, and I had issues with dust especially, and I had to frequently wipe. Now, moving straight into the cushioning, it is pretty much the same setup that you get in the Ja 1s, where you get this full-length Phylon midsole with an air zoom unit in the forefoot, and it is pretty basic at the end of the day, but it does pack a punch in the forefoot because I found it to be very responsive under your foot, and it gave me a very lively feel as well. And you also get a midfoot shank plate that is top-loaded, giving you a nice springy feel under your foot. That way you're able to get a nice bounce off of your foot as well. And moving into the heel, it's basically the same thing. It is pretty comfortable overall, and you get really nice compression in the heel, and the impact protection was pretty solid overall when it came to really hard impacts, but it does bottom out a little bit, so just be mindful of that. And in terms of comparing between the two, when it comes to the heel cushioning, they aren't as clunky in the 2s compared to the Ja 1s, where I found them to be a little clunky, but there is a little bit of clunk, but not as much as the Ja 1s. However, over time, when it comes to the overall midsole itself, it does tend to bottom out, like I said earlier, so it won't be as comfortable in the long run once you keep playing in it. Just be mindful of that. The cushioning itself will bottom out. In terms of fluidity, they are very fluid, just like the Ja 1s, but it isn't as clunky. So the heel-to-toe transitions are pretty much very smooth. And because of the shank in the midfoot, it gives you a nice snappy feel when you are going up and down the court. So you're going to be really nice and fast when you are playing in these. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's pretty much exactly the same as the Jaw 1s. Lively and responsive in the forefoot with a pretty nice bounce as well, with the heel cushioning being comfortable overall, but just be mindful over time, it will start to bottom out. Now, as far as the materials go, it basically carries over from the Jaw 1s, but it is a much more simplistic look when it comes down to it. You get the same mesh materials that you get in the forefoot, and it transitions into the tongue itself, where you do get this leather piece on the top of the tongue. And the rest of it, you're going to get this leather material in the toe box area, along the lace line, and into the lateral portion of the shoe. And you're going to get more textiles on the medial side of the shoe, and it transitions to this leather piece that you get stitched onto the back of the shoe. And it is pretty comfortable. However, you do have to break it in, especially in the forefoot. I did notice a little bit of pinching, especially from the leather materials, so you do have to break it in. But luckily, the mesh is nice and thin, so it is pretty flexible once you break in the rest of the materials, and you won't have any pinching in the forefoot once you break it in. And because of the padding that you get, which is nice and abundant, you aren't going to have any irritations from the lace line, especially. The padding in the back is pretty basic, but it is generally pretty comfortable nonetheless, and you do get a little bit extra padding on the outside of the heel area as well. In terms of aesthetics, they look pretty basic in terms of the design, but it has some hints of the Kobe 5 with the overall shape that you get. But the colorway that I have here looks really cool. And in my opinion, you do get mismatched colors for the Nike logo as well as the Ja Morant logo. You also get this splatter print that you get on the midsole, which is pretty nice. And the whole back of half of the shoe has this reflective material, so you're going to have a nice reflective look once you shine it at a right angle. And this leather piece that you get in the back has the shooting star like feel, and once you put it at the right angle, it does change to this different shade, which looks pretty cool. And you also get more storytelling on the bottom of the shoe, which is pretty basic, but at the end of the day is pretty nice in general. So in terms of material, it's basically the same when it comes to the overall feel, just like in the Ja 1s, but in terms of aesthetics, it is a more basic approach compared to the Ja 1s. Now, getting into lockdown, to me, I just found these to be average at the end of the day. In the forefoot, the fit aids in the containment a little bit, but you do move in the footbed when it comes to making lateral cuts because of how forgiving and flexible the material is. So when you're doing lateral cuts, the material does give out on you and you slide inside the footbed a little bit, and it was kind of an annoyance when you are constantly going side to side when you're trying to be a perimeter defender. But the length of the shoe, while it does run a little long, it doesn't move that much, so you are pretty much set when it comes to that side of the shoe. But in terms of the lateral cuts, you are going to be sliding a little bit in the forefoot, and it kind of continues into the midfoot. The lacing system is pretty standard, and the tongue itself is almost independent. You do get some gusset in the middle of the shoe, but it is generally pretty loose, and it does mess up the overall containment in the midfoot. But the lacing system does its job in terms of containing it, to say the least. And in the back, it's the same story. You get a little bit of padding, and it is sculpted a little bit. And initially, I had crazy amounts of heel slippage, and it did improve over time once the sculpting in the back does mold to the back of your foot. So it improved it to the point where there was some heel slippage, and it was overall doable to play in. But at the end of the day, lockdown is just pretty average in my opinion, with the forefoot sliding when you're doing lateral cuts. Lacing system's pretty basic, but it doesn't help because of the independent tongue, and the overall sculpting that you get aids it a little bit, but you have to break it in just to get that overall containment to be just pretty average in my opinion. And last but not least, when it comes to support, to me, I consider this a step up to the Ja 1s, but not by much. But it is pretty solid at the end of the day. In terms of lateral support, you do get this protruding flange that you get, creating an outrigger, and you also get the midsole wrapping up into the material a little bit with this leather as well to contain it. But it is pretty basic when it comes to the lateral containment. Like I said earlier in the lockdown, it does slide a little bit when you're doing lateral cuts, so the material does give out on you, but luckily the midsole and the flange does create like a supportive carrier so that you won't roll your ankle basically. And when you move into the midfoot, you get this lateral panel as well as you sitting within this midsole, so you're going to have some pretty decent containment when it comes to the midfoot section. And in the heel, you do get this internal TPU heel counter along with really nice backed material, and you do get flared out midsole in the back of the shoe, so you're going to have a little bit of extra support when it comes to lateral movements in the back half of the shoe, which was an improvement to me. It was just basically flattened out, and it wasn't that balanced when it came down to it. So this was overall an improvement when it comes to the lateral support, in my opinion. But in terms of torsional support, it is pretty much the same. You do get the same midfoot shank plate that is top loaded, so you are going to get some rigidity in the midfoot where you need it, and it is pretty balanced overall, just like in the jaw ones. However, an improvement to it is the base, where in the jaw ones they were quite slim and it was flat, but it wasn't necessarily wide. But in the jaw 2s, it is slightly wider, and because of the flange, you do get a little more base support from the overall shoe itself. So in terms of torsional support, it's pretty much the same. However, you do get a wider base in the jaw 2s compared to the jaw 1s. So yeah, at the end of the day, the support is pretty solid. It is a step up to the jaw 1s in terms of the overall lateral support that you get. But for torsional rigidity, it's pretty much the same, but you do get an improvement in the base itself. So to sum it up for you guys, the jaw 2s perform exactly the same in many cases compared to the jaw 1s. The traction is pretty good. At the end of the day, it is very grippy. However, it does suffer from inconsistencies, unlike the jaw 1s. Cushioning is pretty much the same, responsive, lively under your foot, pretty bouncy, and decently comfortable at the end of the day. Materials, pretty comfortable at the end of the day. The jaw 2s are a little bit more simplistic compared to the jaw 1s, and the lockdown to me feels pretty much the same. However, this might be considered a downgrade in many cases, and the support, an improvement laterally when it comes to the jaw 2s compared to the jaw 1s, but the overall torsional rigidity and balance that you're going to get is basically the same. However, the base on the jaw 2s is slightly wider and more supportive compared to the jaw 2s. So if you want a more supportive shoe, I would go with the jaw 2s. However, if you want better traction, I would go with the jaw 1s because it doesn't suffer from inconsistencies when you are playing on a clean court or a dusty court. So if you want similar performance in the jaw 1s and the jaw 2s, because they perform exactly the same. And so if you want to save a little bit of money, go with the jaw 1s. But if you want a more supportive shoe between the two, I would go with the jaw 2s. Thank you guys for watching this video. This has been my performance review on the Nike jaw 2s. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and comment down below on what you think of the jaw 2s. Did you play in them? What are your thoughts? Are they better than the jaw 1s, or are the jaw 1s better than the jaw 2s? I would like to know your thoughts, as well as any other questions that you might have. If you'd like to stay up to date with future videos that I'll be posting, hit the subscribe button down below. It'll greatly support the channel as well. And if you want to see my performance review on the Nike jaw 1, I will leave it on this side of the screen. And if you want to stay up to date on social media, all of that information will be in the description box below. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. I hope this was beneficial to you guys. And until next time, keep shooting.